Okay, so my name is Megan Flynn, and these are the outlines I used. Well, I made this one. Well, it's not really outline, just like all my thoughts about like the questions. This, and then like this on the back. But before I go, I just want to say that I get nervous speaking in front of people, and I really tend to forget my words, especially like with videos, and I don't really know how to work like camera and upload it and everything. So I'm sorry. I would try to make the time. But so for the question that we got addressed, well, the third set of questions, we're talking about imperialism. Imperialism is spreading. It's the act of spreading a country's empire to new territory through colonization and force. So like when a country feels they need to like spread their land, or like they need more territory, they either do it through the army, like taking over, or they do it like by making allies and like getting new imports and sharing materials and stuff, like trading. So they become allies and they get to like join together, and it expands their colony. The first question was, what were the different motives that drove European imperialism in the 19th century? I said the motives that drove it, well, I watched it in your lecture, that the motives that drove it, like the number one motive was the economic motive. So like the Industrial Revolution and needing new like raw materials and new markets and stuff. So they had a big demand for that kind of stuff. Sorry, there's a bug. And that was the most important. And then the second motive, well, another motive was nationalism. Nationalism is like just demonstrating our power or prestige, like a country's power, like being powerful and like showing that you're powerful. So they wanted to show that they were powerful using imperialism, like showing they're powerful, gaining new territories, and just expanding, showing that they have power, like more power than other nations around them that were trying to expand too. Another motive was the balance of power, and that's different. It's kind of like nationalism, but it's a little different because it's showing there's like competition that going on between the nations, like showing who has the more power, like who has the most power, who can get the most territories. And that's shown in the scramble to Africa, because all the different colonies were like fighting back and forth, trying to get the most colonies from Africa, so who could be the biggest. The last motive was the white man's burden, and this is described as like people feeling like superior and feeling the need to help like civilize the uncivilized, like the savages who live like not in the wild, but who live off the land, who aren't really like, don't have that much technology and are just focused more on like the land and don't really have like the new ways of life set in yet. So it's feeling the need to like want to help them and help them become civilized so they can spread and become a colony or become part of your colony. The second question that I needed to answer was, and again with the first one. So a document by Lugard, in one of the documents that we read on Brightspace, it talked about how he felt the need to use imperialism because if not, they would be powerless and compared to the other nations around them. He had a positive mindset for the African community overall and like helping them colonize and use imperialism to like gain them as part of their territories. The second question was, would you agree that imperialism was in fact the white man's burden? This question, I'm like in the middle, because I do believe it was mainly the white man's burden, as I said before, like helping the uncivilized become civilized and just teaching them ways of life that would help them succeed and live better. But there were also other motives, like in the beginning I said like helping economics, like helping your economy, helping your military. Just overall, imperialism, it mainly was the white man's burden, but there were also other like smaller motives that helped drive it. I also said that even though it was the white man's burden and they did help the uncivilized, the people who used imperialism to help the uncivilized were actually getting more out of it than the people they were actually helping. And this was because they, like, for example, in Africa, they made roads, and the roads were like, I mean, obviously for the people to help them get to work and stuff, but it also helped, like, the military come in, the ports, like, for exchanging raw goods and materials for, like, the people who were helping the Africans. So, I mean, it helped both sides, but sometimes it tended to help to the people who were actually using imperialism to help the others more. The third question was, what impact did European imperialism have on Africa? There were some good and bad impacts. I believe it was mostly bad because it hurt the African society more than it helped them. And, like, for example, it disrupted Africans in, like, traditional ways. Like, it changed their social hierarchies, their political, like, stances. It changed their economy and their social norms. So I guess the Europeans taught them that, like, different ways of farming and, like, helping them grow plants and foods and stuff, but it changed their subsistence farming into large-scale exports, which just made everything harder and more stressed out, like, more stress on the African people than it did, like, than it would have normally been, like, small group farming. It changed the social structures to European-dominated hierarchies. So I guess it changed, like, Africans' normal way, like, their normal African lifestyles to more like Europeans. I mean, it's not a bad thing, but the Africans had their own way of life before the Europeans came in, and it just changed that. I know European missionaries came and spread Christianity and Western ideals through like messages and, like, showed them the Bible. So now Africa is mainly, I think it's East, I don't want to be wrong, East Africa maybe, is mainly Christianity, and it's because of this movement. Like, the Europeans spread Christianity. Sorry, there was a wasp. And now it's mainly Christianity there, and it changed. And the Western ideas that the missionaries also spread are now still used in West Africa today. And of course, like, the infrastructure that the Europeans brought over, like the buildings and the roads, like, they taught them how to build. And I know South Africa is really nice. And, like, I didn't think it was a city, but it is. Like, it's actually a big city. And I just thought it would be, like, plains and, like, old ways of life, but no. And so back to question number 2. I did research on the white man's burden because I didn't really understand, like, the poem. I tried to research it, but I didn't understand it. But it talked about how the white man's burden was helping them, like, the heathen savages, because, like, they felt obligated. Like, I guess the Europeans felt obligated that they had to help them, or if they didn't, then it wasn't I guess it wasn't right for them not to help them because they felt bad. That's the only thing I don't understand. But, and then, so I basically learned that imperialism overall is a good thing, and countries need it to expand their military, expand their ports, expand their, like, to get new land. And, like, you have to have imperialism to have a successful, like, colony, to have a successful settlement. And in Africa, it was negative in Africa, but it did give Africa some positive things, like the infrastructure and the buildings and the roads they have today. But it just took away from the main traditional way of African life, and I think that's what hurt Africa the most, like, the African people the most. And I'm pretty sure I know they were, like, thankful for the Europeans coming and teaching them these ways and, like, teaching them how to do it, teaching them religions and giving them new religions. But I just don't think they wanted to take, like, everything away from them and change everything, and that's what the Europeans did. But yeah, other than that, that's all I got. Thank you. I'm just trying to wait till 10 minutes comes. And my name is Megan Flynn, and that was my midterm speech exam.